Welcome to the Bold Dreams Held Loosely podcast. I'm Michelle Theriault, and I'm joined by my co-host, Taryn Watts. And this episode is all about love, like love, romantic love. In this episode, Taryn and I both talk about our very different paths to arrive at our current healthy, thriving relationships. We talk about ourselves, the growth we had to go through to get here, and also the growth and healing that continues in these relationships. We're calling this episode Love, and we hope you enjoy.
Hey, relationships.
Relationships. Love.
So I think what inspired this conversation is that we both today have such solid relationships, like love relationships with our partners, and we have traveled challenging and very different roads to get to where we are.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you want to start with talking a little bit about your...
I want you to say yours first, only
Okay.
because that came first for me. And I think we've touched on this. I think we've spoken a little
Have
bit
we?
about this before. Yeah, Mandy, we touch on this before? So we'll be like mindful not to like super, but your story came first in my story
Mm.
because I knew your story.
Mhm.
I looked towards it.
Mhm.
I hoped it would be mine, and it wasn't.
Mhm.
So I feel like your story comes first.
Okay. Okay, where do you think is a good place to start for mine? Like what was most impactful for you?
Oh, what was most impactful about your story? Gosh, I think the whole thing, it was
Mhm.
like I got to hear and see the struggle, the
Mhm.
pain, the like real love, the real yearning, and the happiest of endings.
Mhm.
Like that's a movie,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, it is. It's so funny because so Sean and I have been together since we were 19.
Mm.
19 years old.
For
We've been
real.
together since we were 19 years old, fresh out of high school. And we came together in really like at really low points in both of our lives. And so you can imagine two wildly lost souls like literally like colliding together, like colliding in like chaos though, like in like pure and utter chaos. We were um hanging out with some sketchy crowds like doing some sketchy things and just like experimenting with sketchy things, and it was a it was a it was like the time of my life that I was the most lost I'd ever been. I mean, I was a teenager, I was young, like I didn't know who I was, and neither did Sean. And we like collided in this world of chaos, and our lives collided together. And I we'd been together. We've been together since we were 19, and those first couple years of our relationship were very, very challenging. Were really, really hard. We were What was interesting is like we were two humans that were very lost in our own little paths, but like and this has always been really hard to explain. And I think this is why sometimes telling this story is challenging for me to tell, because I don't know if a lot of people will get what I'm trying to say, you know? What's interesting is that like beyond all the crazy experiences that we had, it's like our souls knew each other
Mm.
and like recognized each other and were like bonded. But I think the reason I get I hesitate to say that is because I don't want people to misconstrue that with like, like passionate, like
Trauma bonding.
or
Yeah.
like it's just so passionate. I've had that before. I had that in my relationship before, right before Sean. It was like the most unhealthy, the most uh dysfunctional, the most like it was a horrendous bond.
Mm.
But it was filled with so much passion,
Mm.
and that was very different to the bond that I'm talking about. Like it's very different. It's like it has a very different energetic signature to it. And so it was like my soul knows your soul. My soul, somewhere deep beneath my layers, I could get to see his beneath all his layers and him to me. Even as young as we were. And at the same time of that like very like spiritual soul bond, at the same time we were living out a very dysfunctional human experience together. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So fast forward, so we, we lived like this, and we lived in this kind of chaotic relationship for many years in our early 20s. And um Sean Sean, so I followed the path of my I graduated high school, I went to university, I got a job right out of university with the government of Canada. Like I always checked all the boxes. I was like the good one. Like I was the good girl that always checked all the boxes. Sean, not so much. Sean bounced around, got kicked out of I don't even know how many elementary schools and then high schools. He was, he was like your typical undiagnosed ADHD. Had a lot of just like a lot of energy that was expended in the wrong directions. Went from school to detention centers to, and then had teacher after teacher after teacher write him off left, right, and center, and then ended up getting kicked out of school in grade 10 and never went back. So Sean's path was very, 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 very different than mine. And he'd always been the screw up. Like he's always been the screw up that people said he'd never amount to anything. And I never believed that. Like I never, ever, 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 ever believed that. Even though his actions were saying otherwise. He was actually screwing up, like big time. He was doing a lot of shitty things and he was screwing things up. He was struggling with addictions. He was hanging out with the wrong crowd. But again, like I could see in his soul, like I knew who he was, and I knew he who I knew who he was. Like I was about to say I knew who he could become, but it was like beyond that. I just knew who he was. However, that's not enough. You know?
Yeah.
The other person has to want to do their work. The other person has to also see who they are in order to like step into that. And so probably about 6 years into our relationship, was it 6 years, 5 or 6 years into our relationship, we broke up. And that was one of the most devastating and pivotal times of my entire life was that breakup. And I knew, though, I knew in my heart, just as much as I knew his soul, I knew in my heart of hearts that this chaotic dance that we were dancing and the loop that we were spinning in would never change unless I removed myself from it. And I I knew that I needed to, I needed to unplug myself from the loop. I needed to, I was also very much recognizing my part in the loop and my role in this chaotic dance that we were dancing in together. And I knew that I needed to, I needed to go heal. I needed to go meet myself. I needed to go figure out who I was. And I'd so fully trusted that one of two things would happen. I would either, like, my growth, my meeting of myself would either inspire his and we would grow together, or it wouldn't. And I would go this way. And, I often, for those of you watching the video right now, I'm kind of like doing some hand things, but I often see it as, again, like one of two things can happen. I'm growing. I'm going over here. And whether you're coming with me or not, I'm going over here. And either my growth will like inspire his and we'll grow together, or I'm growing and he's staying put. And what happens over time is that gap between us gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's like, and that's true for any relationship, right? Like not just even romantic relationships. That's been true in my friendships. That's been true in different relationships in my life. Are we growing together or are we growing apart? And the more apart you grow from someone, the larger that gap becomes, and the less connection you have with someone. So we broke up for 6 months, and that was a very, 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 very pivotal time for me in my life. It was, I actually like mark my life in those two chapters, like before pre-breakup and post-breakup, because what happened in those 6 months was, I mean, you know me, like when I'm all into something, I'm like, oh, I'm going in. I'm going to meet myself. I am meeting every corner of who I am. I am looking at every shadow. I am sitting with myself. I went on a spiritual retreat to Sedona, Arizona, because I was like, I'm all in. I may as well go to the most magical place on earth and go like, and I I went to Sedona and I met with healing practitioners. I did, energy clearings in the Red Rock Vortex Mountains. I it was like a breaking open point. And then when I got home, that journey just continued. And I continued to meet myself. And it was the first time like I could ever, like it's the first time I'd ever really done that, like ever really started to do the work on myself. And what I didn't really realize was happening was I was like falling in love with me. Like I was discovering who I was. Like
Yeah.
I don't know if I didn't know who I was before that point. Um and my story goes like I did my work completely and fully releasing Sean of any pressure to do his. And I had to do that. I had to come to this realization. And I remember this like heartbreaking moment. I was sitting with one of my girlfriends and I was telling her about um, the breakup. And it was this really heartbreaking realization that I still felt that strong soul connection, knowing that right here, right now in this lifetime, I had to do this work without this human that I loved so much. And maybe we'd figure it out in this lifetime, or maybe we wouldn't. But the thought that I was when I was talking to my girlfriend was, but I know that this human is like my soulmate. I know this is my person, and if it's not in this lifetime, maybe it will be in the next.
That makes me emotional, even though I know you ended up together.
I know, and it was like I remember that being like, that's okay if it's the next lifetime. Like that being like a real honest to God thought of, that's okay. Like that was my, that was my comfort.
Mm.
Um, and so our story goes, and again, like this is where not everyone's story ends like this, but our story goes like it wasn't overnight. It wasn't some magical event that happened. It was hard. It was step by step by step. It was healing together. It was healing a lot of the past hurts that we had done to each other in the previous, chapters of our relationship. It was doing our work, and his looks different than mine. And I think that's also important. My work is I love to meditate, I love to journal, I love to feel my feelings, I like to talk about things, I like to read books. His work looks very different. And it was about it looked like honoring his journey, honoring my journey, and taking solid steps forward together. And I like lose track of time now, so I don't even know how many years we've been together. I don't know, I don't know, 19 years?
Wow.
Has it been nine? Did I just make that up?
I don't know.
Am I right? Holy moly. Wow. So 19 years we've been together. And what we've it's almost shocking where our lives have come. Like it is beyond anything I could have ever imagined we could become in this lifetime. Like maybe in a future lifetime, but in this lifetime, I it's and it's so that's why this conversation is cool, because it's not something because it's so consistently this is our reality now. I forget. I forget about like the past chapters, and it's not hard. This is I think we were talking about this in preparation for this for this conversation. This area of my life is no longer hard work. Relationships used to be hard work. You know how we have these key areas of our lives, and I've moved through like work in multiple key areas of my life, and the first one was marked by relationships. And now this area of my life is so healthy, it's so thriving. It's not work anymore. It's just like this beautiful thriving outlet in my life. What I've learned is that like my ability to have seen the real human, like the real soul inside of Sean, beyond all of the false selves that was presenting to the world, and all of the drama that we were inside of, like that was real. And he has become, who he has stepped into today. So for like, a high school dropout, he's now a CEO of a tech company. Like, what the hell? Like, it's like he has like he has flourished and like stepped in, and I don't even know how to say it, but he's arrived into this expression of himself that it, it just blows me away. It blows me away to think about how far we have come. It's shocking.
Hang on one sec.
Yeah, I gotta get my tea too.
Okay. What is it really like, if you had to describe what it feels like now, what your love feels like, what your partnership feels like? What does it feel like now?
Mm. I So this particular chapter is marked by, we're both entrepreneurs. So you know this, Michelle, but I became an entrepreneur. I left my government job, became an entrepreneur to be a full-time coach, then start the Mind Rebel Academy. While I was doing that, Sean was working a 9 to 5 construction job and really holding down the fort at home and giving us a stable paycheck so I could build my business. And then once my business was at a place where he could do the same. Like through my journey of entrepreneurship, his was born. Like he was like, look at what my wife is doing. I want to do that too. Like I want to create something too in the world. And then his journey of entrepreneurship started, and he created a tech company for the construction industry. And so the flavor of our relationship right now and how I feel, I am in constant awe and like admiration, in like such adoration of my husband. And I I think about where we were, I don't know, that's a long 15 years ago. Like I I don't even know if I could have like dreamt that maybe one day I would feel that way.
Yeah.
But I am in constant adoration and awe of him. Constant. This guy who was written off more times than you can count, like constant adoration. Yeah.
I don't think I've ever, in all of the time I've known you, I don't know if I have ever heard you complain about Sean.
Mm.
Not that actually you really complain about anyone, like really, but I don't know if I have ever, even though like you still, how people are like, oh, I love him but this or love him but that, or like, oh,
Mhm.
I don't think I've ever heard any complaint, even a shade of a complaint, ever leave your mouth about him.
Mm. That's a cool reflection.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I think it's because I I I respect him. So if like, because there's complaints, obviously, right? Like I'm not like, oh, everything about you is perfect. That's not it at all. But I respect him so much, and I honor our relationship. Our relationship, my marriage, is the most important relationship in my entire life. It's so important to me.
Hmm.
There's nothing more important.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like it's so sacred, and like throwing in complaints with other people around this sacred thing, like it's like almost like throwing stones at something so sacred and special. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It makes sense to me now.
Mm.
I think I spent most of my life in relationships being in a relationship with someone that I constantly complained about. I thought that was normal. I thought it was normal to secretly hate the person you're with and just talk to your friends and mom about how shitty that person is. And then be like, yeah, you should feel that way. Ugh. I thought
Mm.
that was normal.
Mm.
I don't think so now. Now I'm like, yeah, I can't. I feel you, but
You know what it's funny is I'm like a fiercely loyal person, fiercely loyal to like the people I love, whether it's my partner, whether it's family, whether it's friends, like fiercely loyal. And it's like the kind of energy like I think about my brother, for example, especially growing up. We were so close in age, and like I could to like say to my friends like, "Oh, Mike's really pissing me off. He did this thing." And
yeah.
if anyone were to say, "Oh, Mike's such an asshole," I would be like, out. Like, you're done. You're cut off from my life. It's like, and it's the same energy of, even when Sean and I were going through very, very hard times, I was so protective of him. I was protective of us. I was protective. I was, for me, talking to people, like, there had to be, it was like a select couple people who I could trust that wouldn't say terrible things, that wouldn't jump on the bandwagon of hate and like just feeding the beast. Do you know what I mean?
I do. Remember before when you were saying like, I don't know how to describe this exactly, but how you knew it was like a real soul bond
Yeah.
and real love, and underneath all the messiness and like the dysfunction, the core of what you felt was something so real and so precious. And so it seems that through all the dysfunction, there was something like you instinctually protect the precious things that you that really love, right? And it like I really understand why you don't quite know how to put that into words and explain it, because I didn't know how to, being on the other side of things, I found it very hard to know what was real. I mistook, I thought, I thought many, 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 many times, but there's a bond, there's a soul bond. And but there wasn't. Or maybe there was, but it was, it was something else. And part of me would want so badly to like keep it good and almost like not show the cracks or not like show um but it just kind of like fed into this like weird toxicity and complaining. Anyway, I think what I'm trying to ask is like, or say, or like massage out is like, how do I don't even know how I would have known back then. How do you know whether this is precious and I protect it, or this is like horribly toxic attachment
Mm-hmm.
and you need to like run
Mm-hmm.
far away?
Yeah. Okay, I've had both.
Mm-hmm.
So my relationship right before Sean, I was very young, but it was like that.
Yeah.
It's a very toxically attached, very um at the core, it didn't feel good. Like, I think it's as simple as that. At its core, it felt rotten.
Mm. Yeah.
It's like it felt so unsafe. It felt so rotten. It felt impure. Um it didn't feel real in like underneath all the layers. And I think that someone's core, I've I think that I'm really good at sensing someone's core.
Oh, I think you are too.
Beneath all, I think it's what's easy for me is to see beneath the human layers of like how you're showing up, who you're choosing to be. I think that's like wildly easy for me and to do,
Mm.
whether I like it or not, whether I accept it or not. But I think that what I can do very well is I can see to someone's core and I can sense if this is good or not, or good for me or not,
Yeah.
or if there's a resonance or not.
Yeah.
Where I get convoluted is like, do I trust myself? Do I not trust myself? It's like, but so when I think about the other relationships, it was actually just one in particular. It was rotten to its core.
Mm.
That doesn't mean the human being was like a rotten, it was just like
Yes.
our connection was rotten to the core. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Yes.
Whereas this was just, is like when I got to the core, it was just pure.
Mm.
Like beyond the human shit,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Did you get
Mandy's got goosebumps.
Yeah.
And that core is like, it's just so, like, you feel it's like almost beyond words. And I think that's probably why I'm really um I'm really I don't talk about this often. Like, I don't talk about my story often, and when I do, I usually have like very sweaty armpits after, and I feel like a huge vulnerability hangover. And I think that's because it's so it feels so precious,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not sure if it's fully relatable. Or if we're not relatable, but or if it's like, I'm not sure if I'm describing it properly.
Mm.
You know?
Yeah, I think you are. I think it is just I think it's really special. It's its own really special thing. I've never heard a story exactly like yours.
Mm.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
It is so precious, it's so special, it's so that is possible for two humans. It it made me feel hope.
Mm.
Like like the most beautiful hope. Look at what can emerge from like the desire of souls.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So maybe it isn't happening every day. I don't know.
Or maybe it is,
Maybe it is.
you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And maybe this is actually not as uncommon as maybe it is. Like I remember when I was doing my healing healing journey, and I got really into um the first book. Oh well, wait, we got to talk about the book because we're going to have a whole episode on this
Yeah.
book. But I remember, okay, I went to Sedona, Arizona. That was my first thing, and I was like, oh, I'm seeing all the practitioners, all the healers, all the things, doing all my work. And I remember coming home and calling Dawn, my best friend Dawn, and at the time I'm like, Dawn, I just had Reiki, I just had all these like healers on me. I'm like, we got to learn all this. She's like, absolutely, I'm down. So we became Reiki masters, we became integrated energy therapists, we did like all the things. We went deep. But I remember getting off that plane after calling Dawn, going to Chapters because I was like, I need more. I'm hungry. I feel like I've just scratched the surface of this world of, I need more. I was so hungry for it. And so I went to Chapters and I'm walking around the self-help section, which has ever since been my favorite section of Chapters. And I kid you not, this is how I remember it anyway. I will forever remember this story this way. A book flew off the shelf.
I believe it.
Okay?
Yeah.
I kid you not. A book flew off the shelf and landed on my feet. And it was called Radical Forgiveness by Colin Tipping.
Hmm.
And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I need my hands on this book." So, bought the book, went home, devoured it. Devoured it. And I got really really into like the premise of radical forgiveness is that we have these soul contracts with people that we choose to come back to this physical reality to live out these soul contracts with. And sometimes when we complete a soul contract, it's like your soul and my soul came together. We needed to learn specific lessons to evolve in this lifetime. And when there's a completion of a contract, it's almost like whatever chaotic bond we have is like there's a completion. You go your way, I go my way, or we we travel along together.
Mm-hmm.
Am I describing that right?
Yeah.
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 That's like, we're going to do a whole episode, I
needs
think.
its whole
I think it needs its
conversation.
own
Yeah.
thing because it's had such a powerful impact on both of our lives. But I realized, like, oh my, this described everything. This described the deep cellular soul level connection I felt to this human. Like we had lived lifetimes together. And it was like I could remember. It felt like we'd been together for eternity, the soul. You know, it was like a remembrance of like the deepest connection. And I knew that we had been playing this dance and we had come back to this time and place to play this chaotic dance. And it was time to complete that contract and see what the hell happened after that. I don't know how I got off track and started talking about radical forgiveness there. I don't even remember your original question.
I think I said maybe isn't happening all the time, and you're like, or maybe it is.
Yeah, maybe it is because
Yeah.
I'm not the only one with soul contracts.
Yeah, that's true.
We all have them,
Mm,
right? We all have them.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mm. What do you think was the most, in order, you mentioned a couple times, like, you did your work.
Yep.
You did your work in order for it to, well, in order for either good outcome, right? But like, in order for your good outcome to come,
Mm-hmm.
you did your work. If you had to like put a finger on what was your work that you needed to do,
Mm-hmm.
what was that?
I think that I didn't know who I was. I didn't know. I did. I just. I didn't. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I valued. I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't know, or I knew a surface level version of what I was. I wasn't happy.
Mm.
I wasn't um solid. I wasn't there was and so I think for me the work was examining all that and um and feeling my true emotions and feeling my feelings and unraveling pieces of myself, examining limiting beliefs, and then asking myself, like, who am I really? And what do I want in this world? Like, what do I want for myself?
Mm.
That's kind of where it all started. And the clearer I got, the more I, the more myself I became, the more, and the less I attached myself to, I used to attach myself to, uh, I am, I work for this place. I am dating this person. It's like all these outside things were defining who I was. So the more I unattached myself from that and the more I just really discovered like me without any of those things, without a partner,
Mm-hmm.
without a title, without any of those things, I started to really love who I am.
Mm.
And and then something started happening over here in Sean's world where I don't know, something was happening. Something was changing for him. And then we were able to start growing and walking alongside each other.
Mm. In your periods of, in that 6 months,
Yeah.
or in other periods of like between relationships, did you ever struggle with being alone?
Yeah. Big time. Yeah, because I think a lot of my identity was wrapped up in somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
In Yeah, being alone. In fact, those 6 months, I think that might have been, I think I jumped from relationship to relationship since I was 16 years old.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm. How did you cope with that? Lean into that aloneness?
Oh, I knew I needed to let that aloneness burn, even though it was only 6 months. Like, wasn't that long, but
Yeah.
I needed to let that, I needed to feel it. I needed to feel the loneliness in it. I needed to feel like the abyss in it. I needed to feel the sadness when I would see other couples happy together. Like, I needed to let it burn. That's what I like. Usher. It was actually around the time that song came out. I was like, I was like, that was my theme song for those 6 months. I needed to let it burn.
Mm.
Yeah.
That letting the aloneness burn and be so uncomfortable and so sad and feel all the things, that was also medicine for me. I
Mm-hmm.
needed that also.
Yeah.
Yeah. Took me a long time to swallow that pill, though. I did not want to. It was
Mm.
a terrifying, like,
Very terrifying.
it's like I actually felt like the world, everyone knows you need to be able to be alone. You need to be happy with yourself first. It's like, oh. And so I felt like there was this thing there for probably like decades being like, this is what you need. And it was like, oh,
Mm.
I can't take it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So enough about me. Now about you.
Okay.
So that's my story.
Mm.
You walked alongside me, saw me through a lot of that story.
Yeah.
So where do you want to pick up for? Yeah.
Ooh. Gosh. You know, so I remember, I remember, oh gosh, while you were living that story, like in that like one, it's like an epic saga
It
of a
was an epic
relationship,
saga.
right?
Yes.
So as you were living that one grand epic saga, I was like cycling in and out of relationships, right? And so it's like I measured a lot of relationships against that. Not just against you, but I think over time I would really pick out and notice couples who either like there was a hint of like that's what I want or you intrigue me, you're happy. And so like I did
Mhm.
that often. Like it was like happy couples with like real love were like these creatures and I'm like, how do you exist? How do you work? Are you real? Whoa, what is this thing you have? So I have this fascination with people's relationships and stories. And so my I would measure many of my relationships against your story and other couples. And um it's funny, like the kernel of like hope, like the piece that's like so beautiful, is a piece that actually applies to everyone. The piece that's so beautiful is that you honored your soul and you honored someone else's soul and you did what you needed for you. And in the end, you were gloriously happy and in love and
Mhm.
have a beautiful relationship. And I think that when you do that, it's it's true whether you end up with that person or not.
Mhm.
Right? So, but
Mhm.
it's like I was so touched by that piece, but my brain really wanted it always to work out with the person right in front of me in the way
Mhm.
yours did, right? And so there was like this kernel that spoke to me, like somewhere deep in my soul. It was like, yes, something about that is the direction. It's true. But I would always try to force it into the person in front of me. Like and I skipped the part where I was like really doing my work and really being unattached. It was like,
Mm.
I will do my work and then you will come to
Mhm.
me. It was
Mhm.
right. So it was like and some of those relationships was just toxic. There was no kernel. It was like when you were describing rotten. Ugh. Yes. Other times there was. But when I would do my work, I would like dip my toes in, get a little closer, and then stop because I couldn't stomach the full amount of burning aloneness. So I would like dip my toes in, do a little more work because life had become too painful and I had to. And there's another beautiful soul in there, but it was like, oh, our contract has meant that we go this way. This is we don't really want to be together, right? So, and I went back and forth, I think, between toxic, maybe some real something, toxic, maybe some real something. And gosh, did I ever get sick of that dance?
Mhm.
Oh my goodness, like how many oh gosh, it's like I don't even know how many relationships I like cried through and struggled through. And there were patterns that were going through all of them. And one of the big, I asked about, was it hard for you to be alone? Just that was one of the
Mm.
scariest things for me. I did not want to be alone. I wanted to get to the destination so bad that I gripped on so tight. So the very opposite of held loosely.
Mm.
My bold dream I've
Yeah.
always had, but I did not know how to hold it loosely. It was like, it was like, in walks a man who's attractive. It will be you. This isn't gonna make it work, you know? And like, oh my God. And that just like, you can imagine.
The soul contracts that were created in that.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. So, um, yeah. So I got really, really sick of that. And um my work was my work was also a lot of solo work of being ready to actually take a minute to be alone, heal the wounds going on in here about like fear of like
Mhm.
abandonment and being alone and not ever being able to, oh, no one's ever going to love me the way I want to be loved and it's not possible or it's like won't happen for me or lots of stories around I was so scared of infidelity,
Mhm.
probably because I've got cheated on so many different times,
Mhm.
it's just, and but I was so scared of it. I think I was worried that, I know I was worried that, what if all men are
Mm.
secretly, even if they hide it well, what if every single man is actually a liar and a cheater? That was like my like secret belief that I worried was true. And so those were the other couples that I really like started noticing, like they seem really happy. That husband seems like he legit likes her and loves her. He wants to be around her. He doesn't want to go out, like maybe it does exist. So, gosh. So at a certain point, I collected enough evidence. Here's the moments that's sticking out in my head. Um, I remember sitting on the couch with my cousin's husband, who was like a dear friend of mine, and just talking about, I don't even know what relationship I was in the time, or maybe I was like in like the month between a relationship. And he looked at me and he was like, "You know there's someone out there who would just really like to be around you, right?" And I was like, it made me feel so loved and so pathetic at the same time.
Mhm.
Like, here's this human, this like man who like loves his wife, right? He loves his wife. And looking at me and being like, you know, there's men who like for real just want to be with you and love you. And the way it sunk in was like, oh, I'm not really believing that. I'm thinking that I have to do something to like get it. And I also felt at the same time I knew, of course, it's sad that I don't believe that.
Mm.
It's a very, it's like, when you're talking about like levels of expectations,
It's like,
in some ways I had this like crazy higher bar. And in some ways it was like,
yeah.
oh, it's like, I like I feel bad that I let for myself, I just wanted to be like, it's okay that you treated yourself that way and your bar was so low. It's okay. It's okay. But it was like so low. And so around that time, I think I started having like a tipping point, gathering the courage to start creating this vision of like, what do I actually want for real? What do I actually value? What are actually my standards? And what do I need to say no to? Like, what do I actually need to say no to? And so that started the process of being really brave and really scared and crying a lot and being so messy, but of having relationships come in and when they didn't meet the right vibration, being like, no, oh God, I hope this doesn't mean I'm going to be alone forever. I hope I'm not like being anyway. No, 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 no. Am I insane? And burning and burning and like burning. And then finally just being open and really being like, I don't know. It's not like I can't say that I got to a place where I was fully like, I'm fine being alone. I don't think that's true.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't like, oh, every moment of every day I know my worth. Like, I don't know if that's true either. But it was like enough of those things. And then all of a sudden, just this most perfect match to everything I had written and like way more than I had even written, just like walked in, pursued me so consistently, steadily, clearly, and was like everything I ever wanted. And ever since then, I just like most days I'm like pinching myself. I wake up in the morning, look over, and I'm like, look at you. Look at this man who's and I like say, I'm like, I'm lucky. And he's like, I know you are. You know, like, and it's like, or sometimes I'm like, you're so lucky. And he's like, I know I am. And so this like dream come true came true in a way different way than I ever tried to make it happen. I tried to make it happen.
Yeah.
I had to stop trying to make it happen.
Ooh,
Yeah. Okay. That was all.
that was a lot. That was
Yeah.
uh, so. One thing I'm so curious about is the, something you said around, and it's something I've never contemplated before, and I'm really curious about it, and it's also true for me too. That you said, I think that we have this. I should speak for myself. I can sometimes have this image or this notion of, okay, let's go back to arriving despite current circumstances. Like, arriving despite the fact that the man is not here yet, and like fully embodying, I am so happy on my own. I am like so in love with myself, and like that's like the full arriving despite current circumstances. And what you just said was you had enough, it wasn't fully,
Mm-hmm.
you had enough of those things for him to make room into your life.
Yes.
I think there's something so important in what you just said there.
Yeah.
Because the very same is true for me. It's not that in 6 months I was a healed human.
Yeah.
In fact, that was just the starting point.
Mm.
Um, and it's not like when Sean and I got back together after I had arrived, our relationship was perfect. Far from it. We had a long way to walk after that.
Yeah.
And and um so I don't know, I think there's something really important about that.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that is.
Well, I don't know exactly what it is, but what's coming to me is that so I did my work, I did what I could do. And I did my best and I had moments of being courageous and I had like moments in alignment, but there was like still a lot of self-doubt,
Mhm.
you know, um in my arriving despite current circumstances. And then I think one thing that I love so much about this relationship, and I don't know if this concept applies to other things, but I think it definitely applies in relationship, is that so I had done healing, but he's someone who I've been able to keep healing with. And it really feels like the type of healing I'm able to do with him, I don't know if I could have done
Yeah,
alone.
I completely agree with you.
And we're still doing it.
Yeah.
And it feels so good. So, like, one thing
Yeah.
that he's still helping me heal is so I never thought I would actually feel safe in a relationship. I thought that my fear of being cheated on or left or someone not actually loving me, I thought I would be insecure even in a secure relationship because I was like, I'm just messed up. That's it. It's not true. I, my nervous system is so happy. I feel so safe. But like little things will come up. So we love watching, um, like Love is Blind and relationship shows. And I noticed
Okay, yeah.
when we watch, you'll see like, I don't know, have you seen Love is Blind?
I have never seen. I know the premise of it.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, there's people and they're being filmed all the time
Yeah.
and they're drinking alcohol and
Yeah.
like making connections with lots of people and then
it's
they're
drama.
talking to the other people.
Yeah.
And it's like my body tenses
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, you would never do that to me, right? And he's like,
Mhm.
no, I wouldn't. Remember, we're watching a show, right? Yes, I know. But it's like there's still things that are embedded in my
Yeah.
nervous system that like, oh, things can touch and I get to say it all out loud and continually be soothed. And it's not just me being like soothing myself. Man, is it nice to have someone
Mhm.
who like loves you through your healing?
Mhm.
Oh my gosh, I can be my full extent of like, if you did that to me, it would be really like this, and it makes me feel like this in my body. He's like, mm, yeah, you're a little crazy still, aren't you? Just remember, we're watching a TV show. I know, but you still love me even though I'm crazy right now, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, okay, right? So it's like I still have some wounds, not in our day to day life. I feel like safe and but um, the healing is still happening,
Mhm.
and he's someone. So I'm sure a lot of people would be very annoyed with me and my healing process, but like he's not.
I think that the image that you're painting, and like, thank you for letting us in.
Yeah.
Um, I just think what you're saying is so important,
Mm,
and I completely, completely, completely relate.
mm.
And maybe this is the work we're going to be doing forever. And maybe the point of this is to find your person
Yeah.
that is going to walk alongside you in our work,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah. Because it's not going to end.
I don't think it does. I don't think it does. I think it evolves, and um but you're right, it's not going to end.
Yeah. Although I will say, you know what you said earlier about this is no longer an area of your life
Yeah.
that takes work? I wholeheartedly
Yeah.
agree. It's like, to me, when I hear relationships take work, I'm like, I don't relate to that anymore. It feels like that is so like running and
Mhm.
strong and like good and the foundation is so good that I just get to work on me.
Mhm.
And then when I work on me and I make myself happier and I get clearer and I take care of myself very naturally, like if I'm happy, he's happy.
Mhm.
And he does the same. So
Mhm.
it's like the relationship really, I think I've sorted out enough relationship shit and wounds and found like, oh gosh, I'm so grateful that the universe like brought him to me. And now the work isn't about the relationship. That's sorted. Now I'm like doing me and life things.
Do you find that he is a like a crystal clear mirror for you. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of people have been mirrors for me, but a lot of people have been mirrors for me. But what makes him such a useful mirror is like I trust him so much and he has such integrity and he really loves me. So when I'm getting like a funky reflection, I know, oh, I'm probably participating in like, if I'm feeling something from him that I don't like, I don't know if there's ever been a time yet. It's like I don't know if there's ever been a time where it hasn't actually been like, oh, it's me. You
Mm.
know, he's just um I feel like oh, the dog is loving
Bowie
Mandy.
is taking over Mandy's lap here.
He's been avoidant. I'm done being quiet. Bowie, get down. Get down. Um yeah, I feel like he's a very clear man, doesn't have a lot of shit. Like, well, everyone has their own shit.
Mhm.
But um he is my mirror when I'm being crazy or if I'm feeling something from him that's like I don't
Mhm.
know if there's any ever sort of any type of tension or argument or dissonance, it's like this sign for me to be like, what am I doing here? And like 10 times out of 10, I'm like, oh, I'm being like this because I'm scared of this. Okay.
Mhm.
That never used to work before with other people mirroring me because it was mixed with like their
Their
own
stuff.
stuff too. But like,
Yeah. Oh,
yeah,
that makes sense to me.
yeah. But like, I trust him, so I'm willing to even look and not be defensive. And he's just such a consistent stance for like, the way you described how you just like always, like you're just in adoration of
Mhm.
Sean. I don't think that's the word he would use. He's a lot more like
Mhm.
manly and like gruff and like, but he is like a constant stand for me, like a
Mm.
constant on my side, constant seeing me in a positive light, constant trusting me, constantly believing good about me, just like so
Mm.
steadily. Not in like these grand romantic gestures, just
Mhm.
this like constant
Mhm.
stand. Um, and I really just believe he is. So if there's anything outside of that happening, yeah, it's like, oh, what's happening?
Mhm.
Oh, I'm being this way. Okay. So yeah, he's a mirror. What about for you in
Mhm.
terms of
Wow.
mirrors?
My relation so my the way I perceive Sean as my mirror, when I am disconnected within myself, when I am disconnected, um, like he can very quickly mirror that back, like that back to me in a feeling of, it's almost like I think I want to connect back to him, but it's like,
Mm.
and like, but it's actually, he's mirroring like I need to connect back to myself,
Yes.
and it's like the
Yes.
second I connect back to myself, it's like, oh, it's like nothing's changed in him, but everything's changed in me,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
But, I also find kids to be incredibly powerful, very strong, instantaneous mirrors.
Yeah.
But other than kids, I would say Sean is my biggest mirror.
Mhm. I relate to that one too.
Yeah.
That sometimes I'm like, I want something. Maybe it's
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, it's something I think I need from you, or I'm like, and he's like, "What the?" And I'm like, "Wait, I feel so disconnected inside. I just like need to go be with myself. I need to go connect to myself." And it's like, "Oh, there you are."
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So, what's the moral of our story?
Oh gosh.
Of both of our unique stories.
Mm.
We've both landed in very similar places, very different journeys to get there.
Yeah. Um I think the moral of my story is, so before we started this conversation, we are actually toying with having a different
Yeah.
conversation. And as I read my updated life vision statement,
Mm-hmm.
I read the paragraph that I wrote about the relationship that I wanted. And at one time, that paragraph was like, how am I going to say this out loud? I wrote the word worship in there. You know what I mean? Like, this man worships me, and like all this, I wrote strong words. And as I read it today, it was just like this soft, warm, familiar thing of like, this is this thing that I have that I can't believe I like set that bar so high, but it was like a real like yearning of like, this is how much I really want for myself if I could be honest. Um and you pulled a card that says the things you want you. Well,
Mm-hmm.
I forget the exact
Mm-hmm.
words, but
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the moral of like my love story for me is like the things my heart really yearns for want me too, and they can like
Mm.
he wanted me. You know, like I'm his love story. The things you want you right back. And
Mm.
they're not pipe dreams. It's like here and well worn, and I'm like, yeah, I got this now, right? It's like, wow, like dreams come true. Bold dreams come true.
Mm.
For real, for real.
Steadfastly for real, like holding it. You know, that stage you went through where you were like, oh, that's not it. Like, you know, the stage you went through
Yeah.
where you had to be so discerning with what you wanted and saying no to what was not it. That was that I can imagine. I remember that being
Yeah.
a very hard stage for you.
You remember me
I
crying,
do
breaking
all the
down.
time.
Yeah. Every day I cried, in fact.
But like I don't know the word, like just steadfastly and step by step by step,
Mm-hmm.
and dreams come true.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Isn't it
Oh,
good?
it was so beautiful.
Okay, what's your moral of your love story?
Hmm. Mine is my, if I think about my whole saga, my whole love saga, that's what it's felt like, a grand love story.
Yeah.
That's what it's felt like.
Yeah.
A heartbreaking, challenging, and then grand love story. I think mine is um I chose to trust myself in every step of the last 19 years of this love story. I chose to trust the deep soul connection I felt to this human, despite all the reasons in the world not to.
Hmm.
I chose to trust when I knew I needed to go do work on my own and I needed to let him be in this lifetime. I chose to trust that. I chose to trust myself in the work that I needed to do. I chose to trust in us coming back together. And and it's like, to me that's like the moral of my story is this decision, because I think trusting yourself is a decision.
Mm.
But I chose to trust myself every step of the way. And because I chose over the last 19 years to trust myself every step of the way, I now have a relationship that I I just can't believe is my relationship. I
Mm.
mean, I can, but I cannot believe this is how far him and I have come in 20 years together. I cannot believe that we have created this life for ourselves. I cannot believe we have these children. I cannot believe we have this home we've created. I can't believe we've have these businesses we've created side by side. I cannot believe we have this the depths of this love. Like I cannot believe it. It's like
Yeah.
shocking. It's shocking
Mm.
considering who we were when we met, when we were just crazy teenage 19-year-olds. But something in me, in the depths, the deepest part of me, knew. I knew. And I chose to trust that because it would have been very easy to not.
You're reminding me of something about how there's parts that you can imagine and there's parts that you can't imagine. Like when
Mm-hmm.
I see you right now, like what you have feels better than your wildest
Mm-hmm.
dreams. What, what is even better than your wild? Like, what did you know was coming? Like, what?
Oh.
And I'll give you an extra little. There's someone. Oh, I think it. John Kehoe, someone who I like some of his books and stuff. It's like you set these intentions and you dream for something, and when the universe brings it, it like brings bonuses with it, you know?
Oh.
And so I'm like hearing you're just like, there's so many bonuses that I didn't even
Okay,
expect.
yeah.
Like, what are all of these like
You
bonuses
know
that
what
came?
you're reminding me of? When Sean and I got back together after those 6 months, I was introduced to the world of vision boarding and visioning and all the things. And as we were in the thick of kind of our healing and our coming back together and our journey towards, where we are today, I remember creating my first vision board. And I remember this image of a couple holding each other, and they weren't saying any words in the image, but the words that to me they were saying to each other was, I can't believe we did it. And I'm not talking about anything like manifest, like it was like, I cannot believe we did it. Like they're looking at each other and they're like, look at where we traveled from, look at where we are today.
Mm.
We made it, we did it. And that was like the pinnacle of the dream. Just like getting to a place where we could look at each other and say, we did it. I cannot believe we did it. Look at the life we've created together. That is something Sean and I say to each other at least once a week. We look at our life and we're like, holy shit. I cannot believe we have these two beautiful babies together. I cannot believe we live in this beautiful home that we could have only ever dreamed of. I cannot believe we own this property. I cannot believe I have my own company. I don't work in the corporate world anymore. I've created my own company. I cannot believe you are not a construction worker anymore. You are the CEO of a startup tech company, and you're like, I cannot believe that. I cannot believe our life. It's like that wasn't on the vision board because I couldn't even, the only thing I could conceive of was us just staring at each other and saying, we did it. Like, we did it. I cannot believe we did it. You know? Everything else was just like a cherry on top, like context to the what we've done. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
I loved this conversation.
Me too. I love love so much.
Me too.
Oh gosh. I feel like when Nate walks in later, I'm just gonna be smiling at him
Yeah.
and he's gonna be like, oh, what's going on? Oh.
Yeah.
It's you know what I love so much? I love so much that the gratefulness doesn't go away for it.
Mm-hmm.
That feels so good and it doesn't feel like it's going to.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
It's like it becomes it's like, like I was saying earlier, there's these days where I walk around and I'm like, you're so lucky to have me. And but it's not like a take for granted.
Yeah.
It's like the awe and wonder and like gratefulness is still there. And that's so nice. Like this is a beautiful conversation.
Thank you so much for listening. For more information, you can visit our website at www.themindrebel.com or visit us on Instagram or Facebook at the_mind_rebel_academy. And these links can all be found in the show notes below. If you like this episode, we would be so grateful if you shared it with your fellow bold dreamers.